Welcome to Quilts and Other Happy Accidents. I'm Sherry. Welcome to my channel. So I got some fabric out that my mother had in her stash, and it was actually a big block of fabric of fat quarters that I had given her, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago as a gift, and she never made it up. In fact, since then she's quit quilting. So as we were going through some things the other day, I was like, hey, you want me to make you a quilt? And she says, as a matter of fact, I do. I've been wanting a lap size quilt, just something little that I can put on my lap in the evening when I'm watching TV. Now, when she says something little that's on her lap, she's 5 foot nothing, 100 pounds, so it won't be big, but she also likes to cover up more than her lap. So I'm going to shoot for probably a 50 or 60 inch, 50 by 60 inch lap quilt. She's also very cold-blooded. She's cold pretty much all the time. I'm warm pretty much all the time. This creates conflict, but that's not what we're here to talk about. So I got this fabric out and I got to thinking about it, and I haven't made curved blocks in a long time, and I love curved blocks. And I know a lot of people kind of shy away from them because, well, curves seem a little scary. But honestly, there's some little things you can do to keep curves from being too scary. I'm going to show you how to cut out these blocks. There is more waste on curved pieces just because you can't always get everything in the space at the same time. That makes sense, right? But that just means we have more crumbs for a crumb quilt later, right? So let me change my camera angle and I'll show you how I cut out curves. I first got interested in curved quilts while I was watching HGTV in the early 2000s. And there was a lady there, Nancy Elliott MacDonald. And she created templates called basic rounds. And when you bought the templates, it came with really good instructions. And I actually bought, I think I bought her whole set. So this is the 6-inch template block. This is the 3-inch template block. And I decided, since I was working with fat quarters, I would make most of the blocks out of the 6-inch, but when I got down to the really small sizes, I would make some 3-inch, because if you put two 3-inch blocks together, it makes a 6-inch block, right? So anyway, that was my original plan. Now, one of the things that is the newest addition to my sewing room is this mat that rotates. I've made lots of quilts with curves, and I have no idea how I did without this mat because it was such a lifesaver. I'm just going to quickly show you how handy it is. Here's a piece of fabric, and when I'm quilting or when I'm cutting, you really need to line this up so this straight edge is on the straight grain. You want the curve on the bias because that's where all your stretch is going to be. In fact, most of your stretch is going to be on this frame piece. Start with a good sharp blade as always, and just go around it. And you can peel this off, rotate your mat, and if you do it right, it doesn't move. And there you have it. Now you can see why there's waste, because even though I lined it up, there's not much that I'm going to get out of that, certainly not for this quilt. But I might get a frame out of this one. Let me see. Nope, it's just too small. I've got edges that are showing over. So let me get a different piece to make an edge, or the frame to put it in. And this is a little bit trickier. It's not horrible, but it is trickier. You can use multiple layers of fabric. I'm just using one for demonstration purposes. Again, line it up so it's on the straight grain, because this is actually where the stretch is going to come so that you can make your curve. I will tell you that larger blocks are much easier to deal with than these small blocks in terms of sewing. See how handy that is if I can just move that around. Make sure you've got it all lined up. Try to keep your blade perpendicular, which is a little tricky on that inside curve. And there you have it. I need a new blade, clearly, but I can fix it. So now we have the two pieces. This looks larger because it has to be larger, but this will make our finish to be a 3-inch block. Let's go to the sewing machine and let me show you more. All right, so you can see I've got my two pieces here. To get started, we're going to fold each of them in half, making sure these edges match and we get that nice crisp point to find the halfway mark. And then we're just going to finger press and make a crease right there. Then you're going to take your outer piece that makes your frame. You're going to fold it over, crease it, and now you know where the halfway point is on both pieces, and that's critical. Put them right sides together. Matching those creases and trying to make these two lines as parallel as possible. This will help keep you on grain so that the maximum stretch happens where the maximum curve is. Or at least that's my theory. I don't know. It sounded really technical and good, didn't it? Now, here's where the mind-bending part is, because now we've got to make this fit, right? So this end comes around and lays square to that edge. And we're going to put a pin there. The way this template is made, and I really like this template, it works very, very well. This edge, this 1/4-inch edge, lays perfectly flat, and that's what you want so that you can get that bend. Now you see I took a couple of really good bites. I don't want this fabric to wiggle. We need to keep these selvages, the warp and the weft, going in the same direction. So I wanted to anchor that really well. Now let's take it over to the machine and show you the next step. Okay, you can see on the machine I have one of my thread bunnies or thread mice here. I do that because when we get this lined up, we want to put a stitch exactly at the edge or at that corner. That's nearly impossible to do if you don't have a piece of fabric to get things started. If you start right at this edge in this corner, your feed dogs and your needle are going to just push all of this fabric down in. It's going to make a tangly mess. So keep your life simple. Just use a scrap of fabric and get it going. The other thing is use something as a stiletto. Now you can buy stilettos, of course, or you can do like me and use an orange wood stick where you can get 10 for $3. And that way if you lose them or they break or whatever, it doesn't matter because, well, you've got 9 more to go. All right, we're going to line this up on the 1/4-inch. So this is my 1/4-inch mark here, and it's important that this seam be as close to a 1/4-inch as possible. That'll keep you from getting puckers and asymmetry within the curve. So let's get this going. See how I'm using my stiletto to help feed that very edge in? Now I've gone in about 1/4 inch. I'm going to take a stitch back just to lock it. That's just me. I learned to sew on clothing and I learned to lock my corners. when you start laying this out, if these circular pieces start fraying, it really affects the way your blocks fit together. So just take a back stitch and let it go. Now, while I was doing all that talking, did you see what I naturally did? So here's my 2 pieces of fabric. I'm using my stiletto and I'm gently stretching this top piece so that it just comes to the edge of the bottom piece, okay? We want the bottom piece to lay as flat as possible and let this top curve do all the stretching. Then you're going to just carefully sew a 1/4 inch seam using your stiletto and your left hand to feed it through. This is not a machine that ends needle down. If you have one of those machines, I'm very jealous. But that's okay. This is a little workhorse. We've been through a lot together. So I pulled my pin out, and now I'm doing exactly the same thing with this other piece. The other thing you may or may not have noticed was I have a curve on the edge of this machine, and it actually really helps to keep this fabric flat and keep its curve at the same time. Then we just keep sewing. All right, do you see how this fabric is starting to bunch up? That usually happens at the end, but with my needle down, I can now maneuver things. Pull that bottom a little bit forward, lay this top piece, and let the curve do its job and stretch. See how easily that laid down? And then we're just going to finish this block. Back stitch, and we're done. And look, using these gizmos, it's just brilliant. I just have so much less thread floating around everywhere. It trims up easier. All right. And do you see how nice and flat that lays? There's almost a pucker here. But I'm just going to stretch it a little bit and it just flattens right out. Easy peasy. Here's a few of the blocks that I've started. I've got several more blocks to go. Through the magic of editing, next time you'll be able to see some of the different layouts and the ways I'm thinking about sewing this quilt top together. Well, it's been a few days since I showed you how to make that little block with the curve in it, which I love. But I completely nerded myself out while I was putting together and working with the layout. And the question was, why is it called a Drunkard's Path? Who named it? And I went a deep dive on the internet, going to different sites. I dug out some books that I have to read about it. And here's what I learned. This 1/4 round circle in a frame is very famous. It goes back to Egyptian times in some of the reading I did, but it became most famous in the late 1800s for the Women's Christian Temperance Union. Obviously, these were women that were protesting alcohol use and whatever, and they put this block together and called it a Drunkard's Path because they felt it looked like a drunkard walking, stumbling home. Don't really care for that idea, but I get why they did it. But then I was like, surely there's another name for it. Yep, many names. And actually, the names change based on the layout of the quilt, which I thought was fascinating. Now, sometimes this little quarter round square is called a fool's puzzle or a Solomon's puzzle. But then when you start laying it out, it gets different names through history and time based on the layout. And as it would happen, I really struggled with trying to get this floral fabric to all work together and look okay as a quilt. And so I finally came upon this where the focus became the large circular piece and let the frame just fall to the side. And when I did that, it came together and it looks really nice. I also was able to use a little bit of skill in alternating my dark and light fabrics and kind of make it showy. And I discovered this layout has a name called chain quilt or chain link. There's lots of them. And if you want to go on the internet and pull up, give me a minute, the Field Guide to Quilts, they have some really good explanations and pictures of the different layouts. And here's some of the different names that this block has created over the years. The Old Maid's Puzzle, the Mill Wheel, the Wanderer in the Wilderness. Robbing Peter to Pay Paul was one that was coined in England. The Way of the World, and it goes on and on and on. So, yeah, I completely nerded out. But I did get the quilt laid out, and I am sewing rows together. I was able to use these blues, which came in the same fat quarter bundle, and I'm going to do a narrow border, and then I pulled this gold brown out of my stash. By the way, it's in the selvage. It's dated 1997. I guess I've had it for a while. But moving on, the quilt is going to have an ending soon, and I've had a lot of fun putting it together. If you've enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and until we meet again, have a great day.